Hey, Sox fans, it was a sloppy night on the South Side, but the Sox brought the thunder. Got some roster moves and injury reports to discuss. And on this date in Sox history, also going to get you ready for the Thursday finale with Seattle.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Sox. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search Locked On White Sox. Hey, I'm your host, Nick Morawski, a lifelong, diehard Chicago White Sox fan, recording this podcast just blocks from the ballpark in beautiful Bridgeport. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTB. Really appreciate you letting me steal some of your time to talk White Sox. Locked On White Sox is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to talk about the upcoming game here with Seattle, the finale. Some news, notes, and history to discuss. But first, let's talk about Wednesday's big White Sox win. Cannot believe they got this game in. There was a 45-minute or so rain delay, some rain throughout the game, and a whole lot of Roger Bossard magic. The Sox win 6-4 over the Seattle Mariners. Sox improved to 4-1. First 4-1 start since 2005. Dallas Keuchel was on the hill for the Southsiders. He gave you 5 innings, 6 hits, 3 earned runs, 5 strikeouts, 0 walks. He threw 80 pitches, 53 of them were strikes. Dallas was sharp. He mixed things up. He used both sides of the plate and kept hitters off balance. The stuff that Sox fans, you have been talking about with your friends, your coworkers, your family members, as we discuss Dallas over the offseason. What are we going to get from him? He's got to keep guys off balance. He's got to mix it up. He can't give free passes. Dallas did all of that in this game. He gave up a quick solo home run in the first, but then it was just kind of nickeled and dimed after that. Nothing too big. I'll take it, and I'm sure you will too as a Sox fan. Kyle Crick, Ruiz, Graveman, and Hendricks came in. Hendricks, once again, gave up runs. His third appearance of the season, and every appearance he's given up some runs. It still looks like he's trying to figure things out. I get it. The conditions weren't ideal on that mound. He has slipped and slided before on some sloppy conditions on the hill. It just doesn't look like he's got command of all of his pitches, but he got the job done. There was some defense behind the pitching. Adam Engel had a heck of a catch out in right field, and Josh Harrison made a couple plays, but then ended up leaving the game early, possibly a back issue. Offense, wow, we got to talk about this offense. Jimenez hit a majestic bomb to left field, but then later in the game, he fouled a pitch off his ankle and was removed. X-rays were negative. Lurie Garcia came in to replace Jimenez. We'll keep some eyes on that. I'd be shocked if he played in the day game on Thursday. 2 huge home runs. Tim Anderson and Luis Robert go back-to-back in the 7th off of Robbie Ray. Anderson had 3 hits in the game. Both of those home runs were opposite field, left center. Berger had a couple hits. He was playing third, and they were not cheapies. The exit velocity was well over 100 on those hits. Vaughn also had a couple hits. It was so refreshing to see the Sox being aggressive against Robbie Ray. The conditions might have had something to do with it, but the Sox did not seem intimidated by the reigning Cy Young winner. And I really hope that's a trend during this 2022 year for the Sox offense. Being proactive instead of reactive, jumping all over stuff. There was just a confidence with the offense. Robbie Ray got stronger as the game went on, but he was chased in the seventh after those 2 home runs by Anderson and Robert. Folks, if you've been watching this game, it's early. Okay, it's early, but there's something different about this team. You can just feel it. It's exciting. They're swinging the bat. They're creating situations, and guys like Anderson. I mean, we knew that he was going to be a spark for this team, and Robert so far is living up to some early hype. Again, hey, it is early, but these games count. These games get into other teams' heads. They see what these guys are doing early on, and it's going to change the game plan. Trust me, it will. Exciting to see this offense. What a game. Sox, no matter what happens, win this series. We'll talk more about that day game, that finale. Want to talk about some injury updates and, of course, roster moves. More on that in a moment. Hey, BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of the Major League Baseball season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. And we've been highlighting some of the Luis Robert bets that you can make. Total home runs in the 2022 regular season. The over-under is at 30.5. I would go over on that, folks. And the total RBIs in the 2022 regular season, over-under is set at 95.5. I think Robert's going to go over. So get over to betonline.net and win yourself some money. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast. Recaps of MLB games with analysis from our local experts, taking fans through the season like no other network. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Let's talk about some injury updates and roster moves. This became apparent a couple days ago, but it's still good to kind of digest. Scott Merkin wrote about this as he covers the White Sox for MLB.com. Lucas Giolito and A.J. Pollock officially went on the 10-day IL. No surprise there. Jimenez and Harrison, of course, were hurt in Wednesday's game, so we'll see what the status is on both of those players. Rick Hahn said this on the Giolito injury. It's still early in this process. We all remain cautiously optimistic that he'll miss 2 starts. He's progressing nicely. Quite frankly, at this point, it's probably a little bit more about reining him back and keeping him on a prudent ramp back up, realizing that we want him strong for the next 6-7 months here, not just for next week in Cleveland, let's say. But right now, everything's progressing in a positive way, and we stick with that 2-start estimate. Here's Giolito talking about the injury. Best way to describe it is extremely frustrating, but with each day that's passed, I felt better and better. I really don't think it's a big deal. I'm channeling that initial frustration into determination, into putting the work in and getting back out there when I can. Hopefully it is just a few starts for Giolito. Got to imagine the ramping up during spring training, that 3.5 week sprint, and then shutting things down now, then having to ramp things back up can be a little dangerous. There was some video of Giolito. It looked like throwing some long toss on flat ground in the outfield today. And, we'll just, cross our fingers. Hopefully he's back sooner than later, but hopefully he's not rushed. We want him back, but I don't want him back, at 60, 70, 80%. I don't think the Sox would do that. Hopefully Lucas is honest, of course, of how he's feeling. We want him back full strength. As for AJ Pollock, he was out in Arizona. We talked in a previous episode that his wife was giving birth to their second child. So he was most likely going to miss this Seattle series to begin with, but he's, dealing with this hamstring issue. Hans said, we are optimistic come day 11 or 12. He should be ready to get going again. We aren't going to know for sure until he gets back from the paternity list on day 6. So then there were a couple roster moves. Left-handed pitcher Anderson Severino and Jimmy Lambert were recalled from Charlotte. Roster now has 15 pitchers. We'll talk a little bit more on Jimmy Lambert as he's going to get the start for the Thursday finale. There was a big Sox rumor, trade rumor floating around just the other day. I wonder if you heard about it and wanted to talk a little bit of White Sox history. Going to revisit some of that in just a moment. The nonsense rumor. That's what it's been called by Rick Hahn. It happened a couple days ago, Monday night, actually, right before the home opener. I don't know if you saw this on social media. It's well documented that the Oakland A's are trying to get rid of players. And, we've been rumored, the White Sox have been rumored and connected to all different kinds of players, namely pitchers, of course, with the Oakland A's. It was Sean Manaea that we maybe were trying to go after. And the latest is Frankie Montas. And there was a rumor that was created by maybe a fake account on Twitter that Frankie Montas was coming to the Sox for Gavin Sheets and Jared Kelly. I saw this. That's what I saw. That was the give up. It picked up some steam and it caught a lot of attention. Bob Nightingale was actually tweeting about this as well. And saying it went further and saying how the Oakland A's want Andrew Vaughn, which makes a lot of sense. I think if you were to play the hypothetical game as a Sox fan, you would not want to deal with Vaughn. Vaughn is a guy that's nobody's untouchable, but Vaughn feels like he'd be untouchable right now, just from what we've seen, just from what we have been told last year. And you listen to guys like Steve Stone and others that have had eyes on a lot of big league hitters in their life and nothing but positive, healthy things to say about the way Vaughn approaches a situation. And, Vaughn, has talked at length about the struggles that he had last season in 2021. It was coming so fast at him and he had to make the leap, not a lot of minor league experience. And he's finally starting to realize in the offseason what these pitchers were doing to him. And he put the work in and it's starting to pay off. And Stone talked about it on Wednesday night's broadcast, just about the balance, the approach that Andrew Vaughn has. And of course, the versatility he gives you defensively. So of course, Oakland A's want Vaughn. I just don't see the Sox giving Vaughn up for 2 years of control for Frankie Montas. But I was interested in it. When I saw this floating around on social media, I kind of wanted to believe it. And it's because we are starved for more pitching. We as a fan base are craving another arm. And we're hearing good things about Lance Lynn. He's ahead of schedule. And we just mentioned the Giolito situation. Maybe it's only 2 starts, but still, if you can get another proven arm into this rotation, wow. So when you see a trade like that, of course, as a fan, and I'm talking about myself, but maybe you, you bit on this. It's because we want that starting pitcher. When you're ready to believe anything, right? It seemed a little far fetched, though, the fact that just Sheets and Kelly, but would you give an extension to Montas? That would be the question. I mean, because you're not going to give up Vaughn for just 2 years of Montas. In a hypothetical, just spitballing here, would you be able to give Montas an extension like you did with Lynn? I don't know. These are all things that obviously we as fans talk about. Rick Hahn caught this, and he spoke about it during his media session recently, and he actually called it the nonsense rumor. The articles are out there. They're all over the place on some of the things that Rick Hahn said about adding to the club. Here's some quotes from Hahn. The goal is trying to balance achieving what you are trying to achieve in the current season without compromising future competitiveness too much. Part of the reason I joke about the rumors from last night, we are not looking to rob Peter to pay Paul to make this team better. Guys we view as important in helping this team win wouldn't be the first ones out the door as we try to make this team better. Look, if you're saying, how do we do in a 4-game set in May against the Yankees is a measuring stick, Hahn said, it's fun for fans to look at it. And when you get the playoff-like environment, you feel that added energy. But in the end, this is a 6-month marathon. And at any given snapshot, whether it's the home opener or mid-May or early June, you're probably dealing with some things that you won't be dealing with come October. Sure, maybe it's nice to get a little snapshot for where you sit at a given point in the season, but in the end, where you end up is all that really matters. It's always difficult to speak Hahn. It's tough to dissect everything. He's very careful with his words. It's of course, trades do not happen early in the season. Teams that have these assets that are ready to unload these players tend to wait closest to the trade deadline. There's a bidding war. More teams realize, hey, am I a pretender? Am I a contender? And as more contenders emerge, well, that price goes up for some of these players. And the A's are a team that have some guys that are coveted. So when it comes down to depth for the White Sox, and you're just not all of a sudden going to get depth in October. Once the playoffs occur, you're just not all of a sudden, poof, you're going to have depth. You have to create that depth, throughout the season, whether that is, some emerging arms from the farm system, whether that's just, a guy having a career year, or you are going to be aggressive at the trade deadline, but a little bit before perhaps. You don't want to sit back and wait. Like we talked about with this offense being proactive instead of reactive. Well, this team has got to be proactive. And I have a feeling, if things continue to trend the way they've been trending, I mean, this team's off to a pretty good start here, that, more pitching is going to come along. I see Andrew Vaughn staying put, however. Let's talk a little White Sox history. I am a huge history buff, and I am a huge White Sox history fan. There is so much history with this organization. Over 120 years of history. It feels like every day something memorable happened at this moment in years past. Well, on this date, last year, Carlos Rodon threw a no-hitter against the Cleveland Indians. He was 2 outs away from a perfect game. It's some call it the toe hitter. It was the 20th no-hitter in team history. One of his last pitches hit 98 miles per hour, which was the fastest for him since 2016. Perez for Cleveland was hit with the pitch and the toe. And Zach Collins was the catcher in that game. Lucas Giolito, of course, threw a no-hitter while a bunch of cardboard cutouts watched in 2020. So this was back-to-back years for the White Sox to have a no-hitter. I was actually in attendance. I was in the upper deck. I wasn't even going to go to that game. I had gone the previous night, and the Sox lost, and it was just a miserable affair. And I'm like, I don't know. It's another cold night in April. Do I want to go? Should I just watch it on TV? My wife and I went to the game, and we were in the upper deck, and it felt, in the 30s. And it got to the fourth or fifth inning, and then you could just feel, okay, something's going on here. Rodon was in a groove. I mean, he wasn't messing around. First pitch fastball, getting ahead in the count. He was working quick. So it was at that point, it's like, all right, I'm going to have to go down to a souvenir shop and get myself a blanket here, because I think we are going to be here for the long haul. And it was my first and maybe only, but you don't want to say that, but it was definitely my first no-hitter game, and talked about it in a previous episode here on Locked On. I'm going to watch what Rodon does throughout his career, because he'll always have a special place in my heart as a fan, having that experience, and happy for him after everything he went through, and the season he had last year. It was a really special time. So, a little bit of Sox history for you on this date. I guess, another reason why it's painful that, he walked and the Sox let him, but I still don't think we know all the details in that. I feel like there's some things that might surface, later down the line. But I'll be bringing you more Sox history throughout my time here on Locked On Sox. Let's talk a little day game action here. Game 3 of the Seattle series. Jimmy Lambert going against right-hand pitcher for the Mariners, Logan Gilbert. Lambert, we saw a little bit of him in 2021. He threw 13 innings for the Sox, started 3 games, and had a 6.23 ERA. Maybe we'll only get a few starts from Lambert. I don't think it's not going to be a long-term situation. But hey, the way the Sox are swinging the bat, hopefully they give him a lot of cushion early on. And it should be a dry day at the ballpark, but very windy. I think I'm going to make it out to that game. And of course, getting ready for that big Saturday game against Tampa, that Liam Hendricks bobblehead. Hey, really appreciate you listening. You can find the podcast everywhere you find podcasts. We are on Instagram and Twitter at Locked On Sox. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GG. Thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On MLB. Paul Francis Sullivan, just call him Sully, brings you his unique perspective on the major leagues past and present. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up on the next episode, I'll recap the finale with Seattle, and we'll get you ready for Tampa. Really appreciate you making Locked On White Sox your first listen. I'm Nick Morawski. Until next time, go Sox.